introduction. He's the founder of News Decoder, which you all know all about at this point. And he is, I'm sure you've received emails from him, and I know some of you have been actively involved in News Decoder already this year. And he's a veteran journalist who worked for Reuters, which is a wire service, and he was a former Paris bureau chief. Is that correct?
I worked in Paris, not as bureau chief. That's all right.
The former bureau chiefs.
Yeah, that was totally.
And so now he has decided to devote his time to helping young people better understand current events, what's happening in the world around you, and connecting you to those. He's a fantastic resource for us, and we're very thrilled to have him here. So please, welcome Nelson.
Thank you, Sophie. Pete insists that I be up here. Use the mic so that people pay attention. I don't need the mic. My voice carries plenty, but I'll start out here anyways. But thank you very much, Sophie, for that kind introduction, and thank you for being here today. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have thoroughly mixed feelings about being here. You'd much rather be out in the snow or maybe sleeping or doing something other than being here, but it's great that you're here because we're going to have fun. My name's Nelson Graves. I live in Paris. I come from Buffalo, New York, so this is just child's play outside.
Go Bills!
The Bills?
Go Bills!
They're still going, yep.
Yep.
This snow is nothing from where I come from originally, but as Sophie intimated, I've lived in different parts of the world, and what we're trying to do at this thing that I started called News Decoder is to help young people exactly like yourselves better understand big news events, big global themes, big global problems, interact with other young people around the world, and basically become better global citizens. And I'm delighted to be specifically at Porter's today because you guys you're really in many ways setting a tremendous example for the other schools in our very small but growing community by interacting with News Decoder the way you've been doing. I mean, Ms. Bookham's, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing Sarah's name properly, her environmental science class was very active during our climate change webinar before and after, on our discussion board, really setting the pace. I was very impressed by that. We've been talking over lunch about a webinar that your students and some students from Westover down the road will be involved in April. Some great creative thinking about how to do that. And so I commend you and your school for really setting a great example for the other schools in our very small community. With that, I just want to get right into the meat of things. You're not going to have me talking to you for an hour and a half and telling you what you need to know. You get plenty of that in your classrooms or elsewhere. But what I want to do today is fundamentally have you stretch your horizons a little bit, push the envelope a little bit, get a little bit out of your comfort zone by actually producing something, something multimedia. The purpose really is to help you get prepared for your trip that starts very soon, and hopefully to encourage at least some of you during that trip to actually produce something that's multimedia about your trip. It doesn't have to be something serious about the political environment in the country you're visiting, although that may interest some of you. It could be something very small, something that from an outsider's standpoint initially might seem very insignificant, but which once you take a look at it and study it actually shows itself to be very, very interesting. So the goal today then is actually to lower the pain threshold, if you will, or make it easier for you to actually consider the idea, well, you know, I may actually convert some of what I've experienced during this time that I'm in China or Japan or South Africa or what have you, and actually express to a broader audience what I've experienced and what I've discovered. Because travel, which you'll be undertaking very shortly, travel by definition is discovery. And it can be kept to yourself. no problem with that. In fact, most people who travel do keep what they experience to themselves. But it can also be an opportunity to express what you have experienced or what you think you've experienced to other people. And in doing so, you actually may discover things that you didn't know before you started that process. So it's actually the very act of trying to communicate what you have seen, heard, smelled, tasted. You can tell I've lived in India for several years, when all of your senses are assaulted. But just the very fact that you want to try to communicate that in whatever form you decide. It might be writing, it might be photography, it might be video, it might be audio, poetry, whatever, that in doing so you actually discover aspects of that experience that you were not aware of. And that precisely is what journalists do. Journalists don't go to a topic knowing what they're going to say. At least good journalists don't. They actually go to a topic knowing it is interesting, or it may be interesting, and by examining and exploring, they actually learn things about it that they didn't know, and the end point is very different from what they may have expected. It's also what novelists do. Most novelists, many novelists, not all, but many don't really know what the end of the book is going to bring to the reader. And so the very act of actually describing or conveying your experiences can be discovery itself. Now today, as I said, I want you to explore. It will not be through the internet. It won't be through social media. It's actually going to be through interacting with classmates. And on the surface, the subject matter may seem very banal or routine to you. But when you think about it, the surroundings of those in your host, the country you're going to, so your host's country, for them, the surroundings are banal, very everyday, very routine, very ordinary. But you, when you go to South Africa or Canada or China, I don't remember the other destinations, all of them quite exotic, but when you go to these, there's a bunch in Europe as well, when you go, for the people who live there, it's all fairly routine, but for you it's going to be exciting and very different. And so this is an opportunity for you to take advantage of that when you're there. But today you're actually going to be looking into something that on the surface is very, very, very recognizable, very familiar. But in exploring that thing, which is going to be another classmate of yours, actually, you're going to discover stuff you didn't know. You just didn't know. And I can't predict what it's going to be. Even the person who's going to be the interviewee may not know what they're today, right now, what they're going to reveal. But they're going to say something or some things that they don't know about, you don't know in advance, and it could be, hopefully, it could be quite interesting. So what are you going to do? Well, we're going to break up into groups, 5 students per group. And the group, as a team, is going to produce something. Now, it's not going to be perfect. It won't be anywhere near perfect, but the motto of a good journalist is don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Don't worry about that. Just you do something and you make it as good as it can be, and you do it in the time allotted, which by the way is going to be 45 minutes, which is not a lot of time. But that's another thing that journalists do. They work under time pressure, and they make it work. It's not like writing a PhD thesis where you've got endless months and even years, in some cases decades, to finish the thing. You just got to get it done, and you just do it. So there's going to be a 45-minute time limit. But you're going to interview a classmate, and you're going to chronicle that interview. And so in each group, there are going to be 5 people. One is going to be the interviewee, so the person who's going to be asked questions, and basically talk and say a little bit about themselves, what they're thinking. And again, it could be anything. It could be personal, it could be political, it could be about porters, it could be about Connecticut, it could be about the snowstorm, I don't care. You just talk. The other 4 members will be involved in the interview, and one will be what I call the interviewer. So one will be using a smartphone to take photos. And the third will be a video producer or video journalist, if you will, videotaping. And the fourth member of the interviewing team will be what I would call the production manager or the production editor. Now, these seem to be discrete and separate tasks and responsibilities, but don't see them that way. You can interchange. So I don't want the interviewer/writer to be the only person who's involved in asking questions. Feel free to anyone ask questions or help each other with the questioning. And by the same token, the person doing the video doesn't necessarily have to be the only person who's involved in video. So I'll leave it up to you how you actually portion those various tasks. But we'll count off in a minute, and you'll have your teams. Before you go out, you probably have questions. I'll answer them. But then, Sophie, I don't know where they can go. I mean, I counted. There's close to 60 students here. That's going to be.
So they can move out into the Noni, which is what we call that area out there beyond the theater.
Yeah.
That room, which, by the way, for photography is great light. Yeah, Noni, various areas here.
Yeah, I mean, just discover an area.
Out there, you could go up top too if you wanted to find a space.
So yeah, just find a space, and you will have 45 minutes to do the interview and then to produce something. Now,
Maybe if you give them a specific time to return here, that's
Yeah.
best, so that you kind of spread out around.
yeah, I'll go by and tell people when there's 10 minutes and that kind of thing. Now, what do I expect by way of production? Now, you're not going to pull it together on an editing suite, obviously, because we don't have the equipment here, et cetera, et cetera. But I would hope that the person who is the interviewer/writer, with the help of the others, including the interviewee if need be, would produce 3 paragraphs. The paragraphs can be however long you want them to be, but typically in news articles, they're going to be 1, 2, maybe 3 sentences long max. But produce just 3 paragraphs that would be the lead-in to a story about that interview, about that interviewee, okay? Which basically, in some way, draws the reader in to that interview and what you've discovered. So you may want to, in the first sentence, get right out there and say what you've discovered. You may want to back into it a little bit. Up to you, really. But basically, the purpose is to come up with the beginning of a story that will draw the reader in to learn more about that person you've interviewed. The photographer, we want 3 photographs, not 1, not 2, not 4, not 5. 3 photographs of your choice, which would illustrate the article, okay? Video, we want 15 seconds, that's all. 15 seconds of video that would also help to illustrate the article. So you're going to videotape more, and your choice will be to choose the 15 seconds you think are most interesting, most illustrative, et cetera, et cetera. And then the producer, or the production editor, that person's job is to make sure everything comes together, to help out, to be the fire marshal, what have you. Make sure things work and be kind of an extra hand. It's an important role, by the way. And then as I said earlier, one of the people will be the interviewee, and it's going to be random because we're going to count off. So any questions before we count off on how things are going to proceed? You must have questions.
My question would be, well, what are you going to do with this thing once it's done? Don't worry, we're not going to publish it. That's not the purpose. I'm not fishing for publishable material. But by the way, after your trips, if any of you feel that you have the material and the wherewithal to produce something that might be publishable, or that you hope might be publishable, News Dakota, we have a platform which is an open website, open to anyone, where we publish stuff by young people. That's exactly what we do, along with experts. So I'd be very much in the market and be interested in if you had anything, whether it's one medium or several medium. Okay? So if there are no questions, let's count off. And the way we'll count off to create the groups is to count 1 through 5. So in the first batch will be 1A, 2B, sorry, this is going to be complicated. Yeah, we'll do it. 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and 1E. And then 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, okay? And we'll go up however high we have to go. So
And
we'll
then we'll
create,
tell you what to do with those numbers.
Yeah,
Just
what-
remember the thing that you.
just remember your number and your letter, exactly, yeah. So let's just, we'll go like this. That's not really random, because you guys all like group each other.
Yeah. So this.
Sorry, question. Yeah.
What if you do like all the numbers?
Yeah, we can do it that way.
What if you just get them to count till 12? Like 0 to count to 12.
Because we need to apportion tasks. That's what the letters are for.
Because all the A's.
It's like 1
Right? It's the same thing, except you're just switching the, you're just switching the numbers and the letters. It's the same, if I understood. Ah. Oh, hold on. Yes, you may have put a finger on something. That's right. Yeah, so if we did, so the suggestion was we do,
A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, and you have all ones over there, all ones over there, all threes there. And then
brilliant,
all your
brilliant,
letters.
brilliant. I love it. This is exactly why crowdsourcing.
Like on your letter is letter so like let's say A is instruction.
Yeah.
C is figure out word.
She's absolutely right. She's found out she's
Yeah.
terrifically smart. Okay, so we'll do that. So we'll go this way, and we'll go, as she said, we'll do A1, A2, A3, A4, A5. And then we start B1, okay?
Great. Okay.
Okay, we'll start here. A1.
A1.
Yeah, go ahead, look away. So who's your victim in this? Oh, you are.
Guys, this part's like 35 seconds.
I'm excited. Like, say hi, my name is Sheree, and then say the word I feel like adventure.
I think we've hit all of our questions, but the what was the most memorable part of your trip?
Basically, circle back to where
Okay, you know what I mean.
I'm from New York City and I'm from that's super Asian. I don't know. The last little part. And I feel, do I turn it down first? No, just, oh wait, I'm excited for this season best. Say what you want to say. Yeah, and we like it, but make sure.
But not so much that you didn't want to read on. So, and it had, one thing that really impressed me is it had a quote, just where a professional journalist would put a quote in the story, right at that spot. Well done.
Where are you from? You've probably been asked this question hundreds of times, but what answer are they expecting? Where were you born? Where were you raised? Where were your parents? Where are your parents from? Or maybe where were they born or raised? But is there really one clear answer? Take Veronica for an example. She was born and raised in Montreal, but she associates herself with her heritage, Portuguese. All of her grandparents immigrated to Canada from Portugal when they were young adults, and even though her parents were born in Canada, they were brought up with Portuguese customs and traditions. They retained and passed on their culture to Veronica, which has impacted her identity. So how should we really view the question, where are you from? Well, it depends on what you feel is most relevant to your identity now. This can change over the course of your life, or it can be constant. But in the end, it all falls back on the culture, heritage, and identity that has had the greatest impact and value on your life.
Just very briefly.
Two things that stood out to me. One, she used the second person pronoun, you, which immediately helps to draw in the reader's interest. I like that. It also, she started the story by alluding to a commonality. We all want to know more about where we come from. So by virtue of those two techniques, she builds some interest in the story. Great job.
Flip phones were created in 1989 by the company Motorola. They were extremely durable and the first pocket-sized portable alternative to car phones or a landline. It wasn't until 2015 that Clara Landon acquired her flip phone. In 2015, Clara Landon and Eliza Kennedy met at Miss Porter's school for their freshman year of high school and became good friends. The culture at Miss Porter's school is technology-based. Specifically, Apple products are very popular. The school itself required all students in that grade to have an iPad. Most students had smartphones, and many had iPhones. However, Clara had a flip phone. Eliza Kennedy was disapproving. We asked her to share her opinions. She expressed that she had never owned a flip phone herself and feels that they belong in their own time, 20 years earlier. She believes that they were productive at the time of their creation, but have no place in modern technology. She finds the suggestion that Apple has patented the design for a foldable iPhone to be interesting, but does not believe it has any future. She sums up her comments in a single word to describe her feelings on flip phones. Ew.
Good. She hooks the reader with technology, but opposing ancient, what for you appears to be ancient technology, with modern technology, the pressures to have modern technology, in this case institutionally demanded, right? So yeah, that's a technique. You've drawn the reader's interest by creating this tension between somebody who started out with no phone, et cetera, et cetera. It'd be interesting to have the person who had only a flip phone to be the subject, but maybe that's another article.
Okay. 16 years ago, Anya Lord was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Her and her family lived in the professor wing of the University of Michigan for the first 4 years of her life before moving to India. Her family's constant moving and travel helped foster her interest in other cultures and languages. As much as she loves traveling, she loves having a home to return to in Mystic, Connecticut. At home, she has a dog named Frida, who has always been one of her best friends. She's a miniature dog who loves to sleep and sunbathing, which helps add some element of calm to Anya's otherwise hectic life.
Good.
I want to know more about the person. One thing that would have helped would have been a quote. You know, the voice of the person. In other words, you're talking about this person in the third person, which is fine. We do that all the time. But to get the voice of the person, their words, and in fact, I was thinking that the video of the girl speaking will be that voice. So that video, I think, becomes really critical as part of this multimedia package, actually, and the photos, because there's a distance between you, the writer, and the object, and the subject, that'll disappear with the visuals. So this is a story that calls out for visuals, actually.
Within the next 2 days, the junior class will be traveling to 6 different countries on 6 completely different yet equally amazing journeys. One member of the junior class, Claire Golder, revealed that she wants her trip to South Africa to spark a love of traveling within her. She also wants to have a more developed view of different cultures than her own. This is why these trips are going to be so impactful on the lives of the juniors. It will be a chance to break the Farmington bubble and give these young women a chance to experience the changing world that they are expected to shape.
Great.
Good. What interests me most about this story is the fact it's very ripe terrain for the person, the interviewee, who's going on is it the first overseas trip, or the first trip of this magnitude anyways, to explore the learning experience. This is exactly what these trips are for, and for that person to be aware of the changes between the time when she leaves this weekend, is it this weekend or Monday? This weekend, and the end of the experience, to capture those somehow, that's going to be very powerful. This is a perfect example where a first-person essay is going to work really well. You just have to be aware of those changes and be honest with yourself. I mean, how naive were you before you went on that trip, and how willing are you to admit to how naive and how raw you were before you went? Thank you.
On July 7th, 2016, a young 15-year-old girl embarked on a 2-month endeavor through cultures and environments, not by car, boat, or plane, but by foot. Merritt Hall began her journey in Provence, France, continuing on to complete the Tour de Mont Blanc, finishing in Chamonix, France, where she started. To Merritt, quote, "There is a certain significance in circling back to where you began, and recognizing all that happened in between," end quote. During the duration of her trip, a single observation of the similarities between people in such different places and cultures echoed through her mind. She drew comparison after comparison between herself and those around her. She remembers this as she tries to express this feeling to us.
Good. Good. I won't use the mic, I don't need it. Good use of quote, well placed. It adds that little je ne sais quoi. I like the beginning where you talk about what were the various forms of transport, not by car, boat or plane, but by foot. You know, that's a nice technique. You back into the subject very nicely, and you give enough information about it. It's a good topic to your story. Good. I want to know more about the trip around Chamonix. The only risk with that kind of story is that the person, the subject matter, presents themselves to be better than everybody else. Because that's what you're doing in the story. You're saying, I didn't do it by foot. I didn't do it by boat. Didn't do it by plane. Didn't do it by car. I did it by foot. And you create this kind of. And so in that kind of story, you probably do want to present some weaknesses. Where did the person fail? What did they learn by failing? But nonetheless doing. See what I mean? You don't want it to be like a holier than thou approach. But yeah, good stuff.
Listening to musicians perform, one usually never considers the amount of effort they put in behind the scenes. What goes on within their heads while performing? Do they even experience nervousness? And the most important question of all, do they enjoy what they do? Marisol Cardi, an accomplished pianist who has been playing for 10 years, answers some of our questions about what makes a musician. Starting from a young age of 5 years old, she was first pushed and encouraged by her parents to play the piano. In her own words, it was something that she, quote, just did, end quote. Moreover, she had to balance her, therefore she had to decide at an early age what her priorities were. However, recently during her sophomore year, she discovered the true joy in being a musician. Music was not just a duty, but now a companion.
Good. Again, good use of quotes. Also, a big error that writers of all types make is when they want to introduce some background into a story, they do it in big chunks. And that background, her age and a little bit more information about her, was just sort of inserted here and there. And you gather it as you go along, but it's not like a standout chunk that as you start reading, you go, I just don't want to read this. So that was well done too. The only thing I think that would help that would be a little bit more about the type of music that she likes to do up top, because that's going to be crucial to a musician. And the instrument, you mentioned piano, but maybe a little bit, a mention of the type of music that she spends most of her time, and maybe it's several types, which in and of itself is interesting. You know, she likes jazz, she likes classical, she likes hip hop, you know, whatever. Could be interesting as well, but good job, man. Next, please.
Okay, mine's kind of in a weird form. Yours was really good. Okay. Eliza feels extremely lucky to be able to experience this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She can hardly wait to enter a whole new world that is completely unfamiliar to her. Eliza says, quote, "I'm excited to meet my host student. We've been emailing back and forth and she seems so sweet." Eliza cannot wait to be part of this amazing trip. We asked her what she's most excited about for Japan, and she, yeah.
Hold on, what was most exciting about Japan?
Well, we asked her what she, like, group help.
Where is she? So.
She says she's excited to meet her host student, and she's been emailing back and forth, and she's, like, excited to try new foods, and...
But what are you scared about?
I'm scared about the free ride, flying, and what about sitting at home and I was just
That's the story. That's the story. I mean, that's good, and I want to learn more, but by starting on what your fears are, people are going to go, wow, she's telling me what her fears are, I really respect that, and you know what? I have those same fears. Or when I was that age, I had those same fears. And to be aware of those fears now and before you go, and then to be aware of how you get over it. You know, you're right. You go to a new place. It could be food. It could be disease. You know, those going to South Africa. You know, it's a developed kind of high development. You know, there's probably health concerns. Even in some cases, could be security concerns. So these are all normal anxieties, and that often can be the strongest beginning to a story, because that's what you're experiencing now. In addition to the other things that were said, which are all very valid. Good. Next one.
In this interview, our interviewee Joyce talks about her experience as an international student going into a boarding school. We divided the interview into three phases: freshman year, sophomore year, and junior year. So during Joyce's freshman year, she was a day student. No, she was a day student before high school, despite her experience attending camps, living in dorms. However, she only lived in dorms for a few weeks in those camps. Boarding school experience for a whole year is a new adventure for her. Her first roommate, luckily, she is born in Beijing, and she has Chinese background. So Joyce is lucky to have a Chinese roommate the first year because she gets to share a lot of things she misses from her hometown. At times, however, she is afraid to express her discontent to her roommate because sometimes there are conflicts, but that's her first year there. So during her sophomore year, she has a new girl sophomore roommate, and she acts like a big sister to her. She becomes more open-minded and communicates with her without concerns of offending other people. And during Joyce's junior year, she has a single. At times, she longs for a roommate to talk to and misses the time of having a roommate because... Joyce, do you have anything to say?
Okay. A close roommate is a person you love and hate at the same time.
Yeah, great.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. That's okay. Great. That's what I would call the story in the raw format. Fine. You know, you collected information, which is what you do, and now you need to sort it out. You need to prioritize. You need to also leave a bunch of film on the cutting floor. That's what you do when you write. You don't put the kitchen sink and everything else into your story. So it's a matter of deciding what to put in. That quote that you just gave is great. That is maybe not the story, but it is a story. Roommates love and hate. That's what having a roommate is all about. It's actually what relationships, it's what marriages are about. I can vouch for that. I've been married for 35 years. But yeah, that's again, that's a concept that you all, if you're not day students here, boarders, you all have gone or are going through that. It's very relevant. It also captures the dynamics of a whole range of relationships. So that, to me, based on the very little bit of information I have, is a potential start to a very interesting story, which will allow you to go back in. You don't have, it doesn't have to be chronological. You don't have to start with your sophomore year, your junior year, your senior year. Chronology is overblown. You know, these stories can be in any chronology whatsoever. So start with that and then work from there. That to me could be a very interesting technique. Next.
When Emily Ho Miller gets asked where she's from, it's always a hard question to answer. As a 5-year-old, she was raised in Shanghai, China, where her personality and life were shaped. She then moved back to the US. After that was Switzerland, and she eventually chose to come to Porter's. Porter's appealed to her because she was now going to have 4 years of moving and consistent close friends. She's excited to go to South Africa because she's never been there and has a love of traveling. Living abroad evoked her love of traveling, shaping her personality and who she is today.
Right. I want to know more about the person for sure. I think a quote would have been great. Again, I think maybe we have time for the video. By the way, I mentioned earlier one that could benefit from the video. This one, if we show videos, let's look at those the first two, see what it adds to the dynamic, okay? And one thing I think that might be missing there was, you know, a weakness, a fear, something that they had to overcome. Listen, the individual is, you know, started out in China, lived in Switzerland, then come to a boarding school in the middle of nowhere. Sorry, you know, these are all. No, I didn't say that joke. When I went to a school that's even more remote, but these are all. Those are interesting and unique experiences. How does a person cope with all that change? Which you mentioned up high. You know, I like the first sentence. You know, what was the first sentence again? Where you come from? It's always
when
been that
she
hard.
gets asked where she's from, it's always a hard question.
Yeah, so you've alluded that up top. Maybe hit that a little bit harder with a quote, and you're gonna grab the reader's interest. Yeah, next.
Okay. Miss Porter's, an all-girls school located in Farmington, Connecticut, is home to Caroline Palmer, a junior. She feels that the coined name of Farmington Bubble is a limiting phrase and no longer can fully apply to the culture of Miss Porter's. The bubble represents the idea that Miss Porter's school campus often can limit students from being able to enact their own mission statement, stating that they are expected to be, quote, global citizens. Caroline addresses concerns that before last year many students did not have the opportunity to go abroad, and that the idea of the school being a bubble was accurate in more ways than this. However, Caroline says that in the past years, the Intermission Project has grown immensely, and now all juniors are able to travel abroad. Through these experiences, she says that the bubble is starting to dissipate, or has at least become palpable. Our mission statement is beginning to ring true. End quote.
Good. Okay. Like it. Just one general comment, and most writers will not, and this is not just journalists, but writers in general. The first sentence that you read of the work, whether it's a novel or the first line of a poem or the first line of first sentence in an article, was not the first sentence they wrote. 99.9% of the time, that is the case. And writers don't go from point A to, okay? They write, and then they throw a lot of it out, and they rejig, and they reorganize, and they redo it. So this, to me, is a very good example of a first rough draft. Okay? When we say rough draft, I mean rough. I don't mean this is rough, but consider it what we call it, a rough draft, and that's all it is. And you're going to take that and you're going to make it better. And the way it's written, the order, the words are all going to change. And frankly, we used to write with pencil and paper, and it was much harder than it is now, where you just, you know, on your computer, you can do it much more easily. So this is a story that I think this is a really good first rough draft, which I think with reworking would change dramatically. Good. We have what? Two more? One more. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Anna Murray, a dancer of 8 years, speaks of her experiences with dance and the ways in which it has shaped her as a mindful and happy person. Anna has done mostly classical ballet, and while it sometimes frustrates her that she struggles to find time for other activities, she can't imagine her life any other way. Anna goes on to share the effect of dance on the mind and body and how dance contributes to her drive for success. Anna discusses how dance correlates to other aspects of her life, as well as how the art of dance is often an outlet for her emotion. Dance is a calming and effective way to vividly illustrate feelings, ideas, and stories. And most importantly, it gives Anna great happiness. Quote, "I cannot imagine my life without the presence of dance," end quote.
Good. Good quote. That, to me, you could start the article with a quote. I would take what you've written, which is a rough draft, and I would put that quote as the first, at the beginning, at the very top. What was the quote again?
I cannot imagine my life without the presence of dance.
I cannot imagine my life without the presence of dance. Wow. You read that sentence, you go, whoa, this person, you know? You don't have to mention Miss Porter's, you don't have to mention it, just that immediately grabs the interest, and then back into it. So this is, again, another example of the writing is what you've done is a necessary step towards the next draft, which could be a radical remake. I mean, really radical. And what happens in newsrooms a lot of times, if you've got time, is that somebody will come back with drafts like similar to this, and they'll talk to the editors, and the editors give exactly the kind of feedback I'm giving. And then the person will either go, they may have to go back out and get more information, fill some holes, get some opposing viewpoints, and come back with a second draft, and maybe a third, maybe a fourth. It can go on and on. Or they may just go back and rework the story with the information they have. And they say, oh yeah, I had this in my notebook and I didn't put it in, I'm going to throw this out. And so this is the process you go through in writing. And it's what, you know, again, getting back to your trips, if you decide that you would like to express some of the stuff you've learned during your trip and how you've grown and developed and discovered, this is the process you may end up wanting to go through. By the way, we will be, News Decoder will be holding its second essay reporting contest of the year in April. Timing's pretty good for you guys. You know, you get back from your trips in January. You've got some time to think about what you're doing, to do some drafts. Based on what you've done today, there's no excuse that it not be multimedia. And believe me, a multimedia piece will attract a lot more attention than a single monomedia piece. So, you know, you use your phone to take some pictures, maybe capture a little bit on a little bit of video. It doesn't have to be an interview; it might be you know, something else. You put it all together for this essay contest. You know, you're right in the mix. You offer money and prizes, and you know, all sorts of fame, fortune. Not fortune, but fame. Many fortune. Anyways, we have time. We only have 15 more minutes. I think we have time for those 2 videos. Can we look at the 2 videos? Have we mastered the technology?
Wait, what 2 videos?
Is Matthew still here? He's gone. Flip phone story. Let's see how this adds to the narrative. Okay, let's see how it makes it better. Can you do date? Is there dates? Date. Circle date. Yeah, we got the dates. Don't worry.
Okay, wait, I want to see this.
Go back. Do it again. Do it again. Here we go.
I don't think this is the right one. We have a lot of different ones.
Okay, choose the one
so I
that's
don't
right.
think that's-
Choose the one that's right.
Let me make sure it's, yeah, we have a lot because we edited it and
Yeah?
put it together.
You want to say a word about how you did the video?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let you.
Yeah.
So this video is Eliza's feelings about a flip phone, and we kind of took this video as like a big collaboration. We all kind of did each other's jobs and worked together. It was a really great group effort. So go flip phone team.
Hi, I'm Eliza Kennedy, and I hate flip phones. I do not like flip phones. I feel like flip phones were helpful in their generation about 20 years ago. I became aware that my roommate owned a flip phone before she was my roommate. As a whole, ew.
That adds a lot to the story. You know, you gotta have that, right? So that's a great example of how the video can add value. The last thing I'd say about that is this whole idea of whether flip phones are good or bad. You can be really provocative in stories, and now's the time to be provocative. We've got a pretty provocative person in the White House, right? You might as well. So I mean, that's a technique that people use. You know, they get out there with a provocative idea, put it up front. You know, flip phones are awful, and then you work in the story. You actually you back away from that a little bit and say, well, that's another person's view or whatever. But that's a great way to start a story. And I like that video. Did we have the other two videos? Do we have time? Maybe just for at least one or two. The ones from the two groups where I said a video would help the narrative. There was a young woman in a blue, your group.
Yeah, our video was, we switched what we had done up there and there, so we don't have video currently.
Okay, do you have still photos?
Oh, yeah, we had three. But the photos aren't really,
We wanted 3 photos.
yeah.
Did you have the 3 photos? Let's see the 3 photos. And then there was the second group of the video. Which one was that? I can't remember. Was this group? Here?
For video?
Did you guys do a 15-second video? You did it? Can you come up? Why is the video bad? What's wrong with the video? Okay, so it's not really helpful. All right, let's see the stills then. I'm interested to see how creative you were. It's not a very creative backdrop, I agree, so you got to really be creative. Yeah? I don't know. Matthew? Yeah, maybe take it out. Do you have your photos? Yeah, let's do that.
Synthesize it and like come up with the article.
Awesome picture, I like it. I'm not sure it illustrates the personal story of the person, but it certainly illustrates the, the exercise, the process, right? I like the angle, I like the colors, the sunlight. It's in my, I don't know, I'm not the professional, there's a professional.
Yeah, I think the perspective down is great. I also like reflecting off of Suki's film.
Yeah.
Her face and in contrast with that, like the light that's coming in.
No, that's a very nice photo.
It's nice.
Awesome. Very well done. Clearly taking pictures is a second nature to you and others here. Good, okay. It's not going to work with the other video?
We're sending it to a computer that has
Can we send it to Danny?
Sorry?
Danny, can we airdrop something to you? Sure. Thanks, girl.
You have to export that. Do you export it already?
While they're doing that, so we'll be wrapping up in 3 minutes. Again, I would encourage you to consider doing this while you're on your scripts or immediately afterwards. The other thing you could do to make things really more exciting for you is to keep a diary. And it could be as simple as setting aside a set amount of time. It could be 10 minutes. Sorry. 10 minutes each day. Be really disciplined about it. 10 minutes each day, and you don't think about what you're going to write before you start writing. Just start writing. And write about anything that comes into your mind, and it'll capture what you've been experiencing on paper. That's a great technique to record what you're doing. Okay, sorry.
To pop or not to pop.
Yeah.
Because a bubble, eventually it pops, right? Or you can pop it yourself. Or something that you're in control of can pop it. Well, they want us to have real life, worldly experiences. So luckily, through our intermission experience, we're able to travel outside of the bubble.
Very good.
It's a preview. It's a preview. The movie's
That complements really well the story. That would fit in so nicely. So, anyway, any questions on this? Any comments? This is the first time I've ever done this, so you guys are guinea pigs. Sophie, can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
My social media czar in Paris insists that I get a picture
Oh, yeah.
capturing this. You guys don't have to move. How do we do this?
If you stand,
So you can talk there.
if
Go
you
up there.
Yeah.